This is the Biz News Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
It's faded into history, but back in 1946, coal miners walked off the job in the U.S. for months, forcing a government takeover of the mines. The miners had a lot of gripes, from pay to safety. But what if such large concerns, and even much smaller ones, were quickly resolved to everyone's benefit without a strike? Could there ever be a global workplace in which individuals were valued and accorded dignity and respect, and where fairness thrived? A Washington organization has those goals in mind. It's called Workplace Fairness, and in this edition of Bizgnus Interviews, its executive director, Edgar Ndjatou, talks about the progress being made toward those goals. Edgar, what is your organization, and why do you call it Workplace Fairness?
Our organization is Workplace Fairness, and what we do is we provide free legal resources to the public on workers' rights laws around the country. We offer 400 pages of new rights content that covers all 50 states, and the language is presented in a way where it's real legal jargon so the common person can understand. And the reason why we call ourselves Workplace Fairness is that we believe that every worker should understand the rights in the workplace, and that workplace should be free of harassment, full of productivity, and that people feel that they have dignity when they go to work.
What's the history of Workplace Fairness? How long have you guys been around?
We've been around since the early 90s, and we've sort of transformed as technology transformed. Before, most of the content was on paper and writing. Then when the internet became a thing, then all the new rights content went on the internet. So we were one of the first sites that provided this type of content on the internet. So now, beyond the content that is our core mission, we do have other activities that we engage in. So we do have a very active communications program, including a podcast that I host, and that is now almost 15 episodes. We do virtual programming where we try to get workers' rights advocates from around the country to talk about different issues affecting workers. And we also have a very active volunteer program as well.
This sounds like a human relationship on steroids in a good company. Why are you needed?
I believe we're still needed because, unfortunately, many Americans still experience workplace violations. And also, when something happens at work, you want to know what your options are, including whether, especially if you have any legal claims. And so I still believe that we provide a very necessary service, because on the low end, it could just be that someone is interested in knowing more, and in a situation where someone really needs our help, we can at least get them in the right place when it comes to just understanding what their rights are, and then that will help them navigate what their next steps might be.
Now, you're not a union, are you?
No, we're not a union. We're just a 501c3 nonprofit.
So that brings up a question. What is the source of your funding? Where do you get your money to operate, keep the lights on?
Yeah, we rely heavily on donations from the public and our board. We do get some of our income from website revenue, so we have website ads, which helps with our revenue. And we also have a suite of web services we offer to workers' rights advocates, particularly law firms that represent workers. And so that includes paid attorney listings, syndicating our new rights content to your website, and also improving and maintaining websites for organizations.
You've been around long enough to have success and maybe failure. Tell us first about the biggest success that you've had.
As an organization?
Yes.
I would say that the biggest success we've had is just being able to maintain this website over the period of time that we have been. It's a massive undertaking. It's 400 pages of content that we have to ensure is correct and accurate. So when people go to the site, they know that what they're reading is true. And that takes very impressive amount of time and resources to do that. So it's a credit to all of the staff members before me that have done this, our current staff, volunteers, people in the community that have supported us to help us make sure that this content is up to date. I like to tell people that we are the Wikipedia of employment law. And if you know what Wikipedia has to go through to maintain the accuracy of their site, which is much larger than ours, but it's kind of a similar process, of what we have to do as well.
There are 50 states, the last time I tried to count them, and they're about as different as dogs are from cats.
Right.
If you're doing advice for, say, workers in California,
Yeah.
that's going to be a lot different than workers in Florida. I'm thinking
Right.
of perhaps the two extremes.
Yes, it is.
How do you manage to separate it? And if I'm a worker in Florida, how do I make sure that what I'm looking at is applicable in that state as opposed to California?
Yeah. So the way we structure our content is that we start with general questions that one should know about a certain topic. And then depending on the topic, we'll break it down by state. And so, for example, when it comes to issues relating to workplace safety, California has its own solar system of laws, and we'll cover that in our content, and then pointing to the right link to get more information. So that's how we try to make it so that you're getting the general information about what your rights are in the workplace, and then depending on the topic, we'll break it down by state, in some instances by county or city, depending on what the topic is.
Well, that is really getting down into the minutia, to say the least.
Yep.
As part of the business world, there are successes and there are failures.
Yeah.
What has been, if you were to categorize it, your biggest failure? What haven't you been able to accomplish? And I speak as of the organization, not you, Edgar, because I'm sure you've done what you need to do.
Thank you. I would say that I think the one thing we're consistently working on now is putting a face to the people we're helping. We're a website, and there's only so much demographics we can get in terms of who comes to visit our site. With some tools, we have a general idea of what pages are more popular, particularly during certain times of the year, where people are visiting our site from around the country, what times they come to our site, how long they stay. But we don't really have an accurate picture of the types of workers that come to our site every year. We get over 1 million visitors to our site every year consistently. And the one challenge we have is, well, what do these people look like? What do they do for a living? Where they come from? What kind of people are they? And I think that's a project we're still trying to figure out, is how do we capture what I'm sure is the vibrancy and diversity of the visitors that come to our site.
I would suspect if you could figure out how to do that, you could sell that and become multi-gazillionaires, because businesses are trying to figure that out every minute, it seems.
Yeah.
Have you noticed much of a change in volume of work pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID?
Yes, definitely. We're always kept busy by our website, but COVID definitely upped the ante, so to speak, because almost every week at some point during COVID, there was a change in the law, and not just at the federal level, but at all over the country, as states and local governments are trying to adapt to the pandemic. So all the emergency orders, you know, stuff dealing with, paid time off, unemployment. There's just so many different things we had to keep abreast of during the height of the pandemic. And so we worked really hard to make sure that our site stayed updated. But at the same time, it also encouraged us to be creative. We really thought about and thought ahead about, okay, well, we have this pandemic, right? And it's going to change the nature of work, whether we can understand what that will look like or not. And so we thought carefully about creating new pages, having a resource page for COVID-19, which was very popular. And, even for the 2020 election cycle, we updated our voting rights and election pages because, we wanted to make sure people understood what their rights were when it came to voting, and updating those laws, also like how to register to vote. So we felt that we would want to do a public service as well to workers. So I would say that now we're still very busy, maybe not as busy as we were during the height of COVID because the laws aren't changing as rapidly anymore. But we still spend a healthy amount of our time and resources on our website. And I would say that now there's been a lot more activity, I think, at the state level when it comes to trying to add or revise or repeal employment laws, and so we're still kept fairly busy about what's happening at the various states. There are a lot of things now that are very popular that workers and voters are looking for, when it comes to paid time off or adding certain protected classes under discrimination statutes or danger pay for frontline workers. There's so many different things happening, and so we still spend a lot of time, myself included, keeping track of potential legislation in different states. If something has been passed, what does it look like? Just add it to the site if it makes sense to. That still takes up a large amount of our time each week.
Edgar, how did you get associated with this? This is such an unusual organization.
Yeah. So I practiced employment law for 9 years in DC. My background is representing workers, mainly during my time as I practiced law, and a couple of years ago when I was looking to make a transition, the opportunity to become the executive director, came to me, and I decided to take it. I've always been a big fan of workplace fairness. I knew my predecessor, and we were friends before I took her place. And she wanted to transition out of the organization, and I was so happy to be able to replace her and keep this organization running. And yeah, and that's how I got here.
Now, you have talked an awful lot about the website, but we have not told our listeners and viewers what it is. What is it?
Oh, the website?
Yep.
So you can find us at www.workplacefairness.org. And from there, you can easily access our network's content. We also have a newsletter that goes out weekly. So I would encourage you to sign up for it, because not only do we highlight our parts of our content, we also highlight what's happening in the workers' rights world. So interesting articles, opportunities to attend events. We put that in our newsletter. We also have social media accounts that also you can follow as well. And our website is full of information. I just would encourage you, anyone listening, to visit us.
Now, Edgar, you've been great with all of your information so far, but what have I not asked you that you want to get out?
So we do have virtual events, and we're trying to do more of them. And also, we'll be doing our first in-person event in Washington, D.C. in May. And so I just would encourage you, if you want to learn more about our organization, to meet other folks who are in the workers' rights community. We have an event on this coming Thursday, that talks about AI in the workplace and how it's being used and the potential legal issues it presents to workers and to some degree society. And we have an in-person event in May in Washington, D.C. At one of the firms that has been a long-time sponsor of ours out in Golden, where we'll be talking about the work we've been doing and also unveiling a couple of new things that the organization has been working on.
You've been watching the Biz News Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@biznews.com. Thanks for watching.